Why physicists don't understand Bitcoin. What Sabine Hossenfelder can learn from Darwin's peacocks. I once had a physics teacher, Dr. Copley, who delighted, in the manner only a physics teacher could, in explaining how a lack of physics knowledge often led people to act in illogical ways. His favorite routine, which he employed on multiple tedious occasions, was to demonstrate, nay, remonstrate to the class just how nonsensical it was for parents to demand that their children turn the music down because it was using too much electricity. If only the child had been blessed with physics knowledge, Dr. Copley argued with a twinkle in his eye, then they could deftly riposte to their ignorant parents how pointless such an order was. After all, didn't they know that turning down the volume just increases the resistance in the circuit, converting the excess electricity into wasteful heat? You may be wondering, as I did at the time, what parent tells their child to turn the volume down because it uses too much electricity. During my childhood, the reason was that it just isn't normal for a 12-year-old boy to be blasting Simply Red so loud at 2 in the morning. That aside, when I relayed the good doctor's assertion to my electronics teacher, who was very much not a PhD, he simply shook his head and smiled, wistfully exhaling, "This is why physicists should stick to physics." The issue was that Dr. Copley's immaculate physics logic was marred by the fact that he had no idea how electronic music players actually work. No electronics engineer worth his silicone would design an amplifier that reduced volume by transforming the electricity into heat, as this would cause noise in the circuit, degrading the sound quality whilst also making the device less power efficient. In reality, when the volume is turned down, the circuit is designed to draw less current in the first place. Even to this day, I weep for the poor child who, armed with Copley's false logic, rebuked his electrical engineer father only to be doubly chided. Once for their deafening dubstep, which is what I understand to kids listen to nowadays between stabbing each other, and once again for their intellectual hubris. I was reminded of Mr. Copley's intellectual hubris when watching a video on Bitcoin mining by the physicist cum podcaster Sabine Hossenfelder. Not because Sabine has an ounce of hubris in her. Her videos are paragons of good faith, open-minded yet skeptical analysis, which I have learned a lot from and often changed my opinion on a topic as a result. As such, when I saw that she, Sabine Hossenfelder, had posted a video on Bitcoin mining, I was filled and thrilled with a cocktail of equal excitement and trepidation. If anyone was going to tear Bitcoin mining to shreds and reveal to me my sneaking suspicion that I have indeed actually obviously joined a cult, it would surely be Sabine. So with volatile cocktail in hand, I ventured into Sabine's video and felt my trepidation fading with each passing minute as it became clear that despite an underlying snarky tone, part of the territory for Bitcoiners, she had taken the time to honestly and thoroughly research the topic of Bitcoin mining, acknowledging that it was much more interesting and complex than she had previously thought. Sabine gave a serviceable overview of how Bitcoin mining works with only minimal errors. Take sip of cocktail. She discussed how Bitcoin mining can incentivize renewable energy production, takes another sip of cocktail, mitigates methane emissions, another sip, electrifies African villages, delicious cocktail, balances grids and drives down the cost of energy. Ah, refreshing. She also erroneously remarked on how Bitcoin mining is still predominantly based on fossil fuels, that swig was a bit bitter, but at least she's trying to be balanced, and that a coal plant was resurrected in New York to mine Bitcoin, I think I just swallowed an olive, and that Bitcoin could lower its energy consumption by switching to proof of stake. Spits out last swill and throws glass across the room, smash. To be fair to Sabine, she stopped short of saying that Bitcoin should move to proof of stake. Her comment was intended to be a neutral observation of how to lower Bitcoin's energy consumption without regard to other factors. Without regard to other factors, there's the rub. At this point, my indignant ire quickly dissolved into the same wistful sigh my electronics teacher had given, as Sabine had simply fallen foul of the same intellectual shortcoming that Dr. Copley had all those years ago. Sabine's conceit, as was Copley's, is to analyze a topic which is part of a complex, multidisciplinary system through the lens of a single field. In the case of consumer electronics, in a simple physics-only world, using a variable resistor to modulate volume would be the cheapest, easiest way of reducing the sound. However, the physics of electrical circuits exists within the multidisciplinary, complex world of free market capitalism, whereby consumer demand, sound quality, portability, energy consumption, visual aesthetics, maintainability, and a plethora of other considerations influence how the physics is realized. Likewise, with regard to Bitcoin, the use of the energy-intensive proof of work mechanism can only be understood if analyzed through the lenses not only of energy usage, as Sabine did, but also computer science, psychology, sociology, economics, game theory, history, and philosophy. How does proof of work versus proof of stake alter the incentive structure of node runners and miners? How does it impact centralization pressures? How does it affect the complexity and thus attack surface of the code? How does it impact governance of the network's rules? How does it influence governments to perceive Bitcoin more as a commodity than a security? Churchill described understanding the role of the Soviet Union in World War II as a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. Similarly, Bitcoin is a complex engineering system wrapped inside a mystifying social-psychological system embedded inside an enigmatic economic system. And proof of work is simply one element of that system, albeit one which touches and is touched by all the other elements. It is for my money, your money, and the entire monetary system the most misunderstood and hard to understand aspect of Bitcoin, and invites such misunderstandings because it's so ostensibly wasteful. Sabine's observation of proof of work as wasteful compared to proof of stake reminded me of Darwin's reaction to the feathers of the peacock as he wrote in On the Origin of Species. The sight of a feather in a peacock's tail, whenever I gaze at it, makes me sick. And indeed, analyzed through a single lens, that is, it is optimal for an animal to not be seen and eaten by predators, natural selection should have switched peacocks away from the wasteful proof of plume to a more sensible and discreet proof of camouflage, if that is not a contradiction in terms. However, Darwin was a biologist, not a physicist like Sabine, and natural selection has led to biologists being more adept at analyzing complex systems. Curious enough to explore why such an overtly wasteful adaptation as the peacock's tail had evolved, Darwin came to understand that the feathers of a peacock played important roles in mate selection and predator intimidation, which offset the disadvantage of making the peacock more conspicuous. Given Sabine's inquisitive nature, it is all the more curious that her interest is never piqued to ask why Bitcoin continues to use proof of work even when the less energy-intensive approach of proof of stake exists. She seems to simply assume that Bitcoin is just like wasting exorbitant amounts of energy and pissing off the world for the sheer machismo, F.U., Andrew Tate, let's go and club baby seals, whilst high on ivermectin and listening to Joe Rogan fun of it. Sabine also doesn't seem to know that there already exists a proof of stake fork of Bitcoin, which launched in 2020 with all the success of a rushed SpaceX rocket signed off, whilst Elon was distracted shilling Dogecoin. These omissions serve to inform us more of Sabine's own biases than it does about the virtues and drawbacks of proof of work versus proof of stake. This is not to paint St. Sabine as particularly biased. We all have prejudices. Mine is an irrational distrust of female German physicists turned podcasters with a restricted jaw movement. However, without even mentioning the possibility of downsides to proof of stake, Sabine is at best not telling the full story, and at worst implicitly arguing by omission that proof of stake is superior to proof of work. Regardless, the Sauron-esque laser eyes of the Bitcoin community are now keenly focused on Sabine, no doubt unleashing upon her an orc army of scam coin bots and maxi DMs. As such, I am pessimistic that Sabine won't be repelled from the space altogether, with this article contributing to her evacuation. However, given the good-willed exchanges that Sabine has since had with experts on Bitcoin mining energy usage, such as Troy Cross and Daniel Batten, it seems that she is more than capable of separating the signal from the noise and further developing her understanding of Bitcoin as a holistic and complex system, albeit one full of nutters and grifters. Unlike other podcasters, who will remain nameless here, you can't imagine her falling victim to audience capture, leaving her husband and kids to hook up with an OnlyFans gigolo whilst taking equine levels of performance-enhancing drugs. Though saying that, it is the internet, so one can't fully discount the possibility. Hopefully, then, Sabine will ignore my electronics teacher's advice from all those years ago, as when it comes to understanding Bitcoin, physicists should definitely not only stick to physics. If you like this article, consider sending bananas to the Bitcoin Policy UK Geyser Fund to Orange Pill Parliament, geyser.fundproject Orange Pillar Parliament. They talk to politicians so we don't have to.